most of you who's been with me on this journey for a while know that before I sit to do a reading, just for fun, don't really have to do it, I tune into my guide Brenda, who is a friend of Lynette's and Bev's and mine, and many of you knew Brenda when she was here in physical form, and we play the sign game. I just say, hey, Brenda, tell me something current with Lynette, who sets up all the readings. And Brenda will put something in my mind, and I just pick up my phone and I text Lynette real quick, said, getting ready to do a reading. Lynette, Brenda says this about you and that, and, validate this, please. And she writes back, and one of these happened where Brenda just put in my mind this motion. And I just knew it was very clear, I got goosebumps as I do it, that Lynette was just within the last few minutes washing her hands. Okay, so I texted to Lynette and she said, oh my God, I got sticky stuff all over my hands. I'm scrubbing and scrubbing. I've been scrubbing and scrubbing my hands. She says, that woman has spy balls instead of eyeballs. That's a Lynette-ism for you. So, these seem like silly things and we can say wow about them, but I'd really like you to pause before I go any farther with this evidence and really think about this. This is somebody just like your loved ones who you used to interact with in physical form, and you saw them perhaps after their spirit left their body. You may have seen that so-called lifeless body. And now they come through to tell you what a friend is doing at that very moment. And it's clever and it's creative. And it's not me tuning in to say, what is Lynette doing now? She sometimes puts these things in my mind before I even ask, before my rear end even hits the chair. She's putting these images in my mind. Now that's pretty darn awesome, isn't it? And you can do this with your loved ones. This is my point. Please don't ever think that I'm the only one in the world can do this. I'm trying to model what you can hope to do. Just ask Spirit, I want to do that. Set the intention. I want to play the sign game with my loved ones. And it's fun. So the day before playing the sign game, Brenda was making this motion, like pulling my hair out. And I said to Lynette, this is what she's doing. Always report objectively, then interpret it. I said, are you really frustrated about something? And she said, well, a little bit, but not that much. And we chatted and I said, well, maybe that's it. And usually when we get an iffy, lukewarm piece of evidence, I said, let me get something else. And I'm pretty sure we got something else. Well, it turns out that pulling the hair out thing was for me, because this was the first time ever when my computer would not go right. I pulled up Zoom for my Zoom session with a client and it just kept spooling, that little dial. And I'm looking at the clock and it's now 2 minutes after the hour and it's still spooling. Finally, I come on and now my client can't get her microphone to work, can't get her video to work. When she finally did, her computer shut down. It was absolutely pulling the hair out. And I finally, 10 minutes in, we got it figured out. And I looked at her, I said, I can't do a reading like this. I'm just totally off balance. We have to reschedule. And I know, just as we know things intuitively, something was off in the energy that day and I was not supposed to do a reading. So we rescheduled the reading and it went perfectly. So the lesson here is Brenda knew that was going to happen. And you just tune in and please don't plow through something just because you made the decision to do it. Honor the circumstances, trust Spirit, and be willing to, as Joy gave me the little tip earlier, pivot. They want me to start saying pivot because sometimes I can get really stuck on one trajectory. If, Ty and I make plans and suddenly he wants to change them, I'm like, but you said, and I hear pivot. Okay. We can turn, we can flow. Pivot's all about flowing, right? All right. I love this one here. So how many of you have done readings for others or brought through a message for somebody not even in a reading, and they say, no, I don't know what that is. And you just say, maybe I was wrong. Or the more you go along this path, you say, I know what I'm seeing and I feel your loved ones, so I'm going to trust it. I hope you figure it out. Happily, the latter is the case here. I was on my way to the Helping Parents Heal conference in Scottsdale last August. Show up at the airport. I'm sitting across from a couple in the lounge at the gate in the chairs right there at the gate, waiting for our flight. And I looked over at them and I just knew. I said, this could have been anybody. Where was I? Savannah, Georgia, I think, or maybe it was Atlanta. I don't know. I said, you're going to the Helping Parents Heal conference in Scottsdale, aren't you? Yeah, we were in Atlanta because we were all going to Phoenix. And they looked at me and they said, yes, you're Suzanne Giesemann, aren't you? And I said, yes. And we got to talking, and I don't know if they told me they had a son. I don't know what they told me. They're watching now, Natalie and Chuck. So you probably remember, but I don't. But I had been told that morning to put a copy of my book, Messages of Hope, in my carry-on. I never do. And I reached in and I said, well, this is for you. It was such a cool moment. Got goosebumps right here. So we went on the flight, and I don't remember if we were sitting close together or not. But when we got to the baggage claim at Scottsdale, I'm standing there, and this just does not happen that often, but here's their son. And I went up to them and I said, your son is here, and he's showing me. He has his arms out to the side, and he's wearing a tie and a vest and a coat, suit coat. I mean, fancy ties, vest, and suit coat. And they both looked at each other and they said, he never dressed like that. And I said, okay, well, let me feel his personality. They wrote down what I said. Let's see. Oh, just great energy. And that he showed me he could be very challenging at times. Now, it's pretty generic, right? Anybody that has a son, I'm sure. But they said, oh, yes. But Dad said, well, he rode a motorcycle and he had a motorcycle vest. And I love to really stick with what the Spirit's showing me. It was not a motorcycle vest. It was a fancy vest that you wear under a suit coat. And I said, I don't think that's it. But, well, I know he's here, and he's going to be with you throughout this trip and at the conference. So we left it at that. And I'm sure, I remember I saw them several times at the conference and nothing was said. So here we are. I think it's 7 months since August, September, November, December, February, March. 8 months later, I get an email from Natalie. She said she had just had a reading with a medium. She was thinking about what came through. She's sitting in her living room, and all of a sudden she said, oh my God. She stood up, she walked to her very own bedroom, and there on the dresser that she looks at every day is, hang on, I'm going to bring up the picture. This picture of their son, Zach. What's he wearing, everybody? A tie, a vest, and a suit coat. And what are his arms doing? They're out to the side. And she said, we even have a separate photo of him without the people in it, without Mom and Dad, Natalie and Chuck, with his arms out, showing off this vest, coat, and tie. It was his prom picture, and they'd had it for years and years. And, you know, we just forget these things. And can't you just imagine their son across the veil celebrating? You have finally figured it out, Mom and Dad. But it was just a very, very special moment when they finally got that. So what's really cool is that was not in their conscious mind at all when he dropped in. So again, it's not like a medium is reading the loved one here's minds. This is real communication from your loved ones who have passed. They are not dead and gone. You did not lose them. This is vocabulary. I lost my father. I lost my mother, my wife, my husband, my child. That does a disservice to those across the veil who are working really hard to let you know they're still here. Let's see. I just want to celebrate the fact that when I tell you our trajectory of learning, our soul's evolution is ever onward, ever upward, it is true. And it's so much fun to see it in each other. And I would like you to know that it's happening with me. I've told you all along, I keep asking Spirit to help me see the spirits, and it's unfolding beautifully, beautifully. And just this past week, I think, maybe a little over a week ago, was doing a reading for a woman, and I said, I can see your husband's nose. I can see the shape of it. I described the shape of his face. And I said, and bushy eyebrows. This is unusual for me, and I'm loving it. And she said, ask him to show you his hand. So when somebody does that, don't question it. Go with it. He's right here, right? I said, show me your hand. It flashed so quickly, but that's all I need. And it came with this knowing. And I said, he's missing a finger. He's missing a digit. I could see it. And she said, 3 of them. Woo, goosebumps again. Anybody else have the goosebumps? That was so cool. But the really unusual thing that I have found in mediumship, and maybe those of you who connect across the veil found it true too, when you know so clearly what's happening in a reading because of the claircognizance, because your fields are so merged, it's obvious that that's what's going on, that the hand was missing a digit. Even if you don't see it, you know. So as I say and share this story, she says, let him show you his hand. It's obvious to me, well, what else would it be? But he was missing a finger. And is that so? I don't know. You know, maybe he had a bunch of rings. I don't know, but it was just there in the vision. Later on, a couple of days later, did a reading. A woman's son came through. I said, well, he has hair. He looks a little bit like Jesus, long hair, and he has a beard here, and he's wearing a white t-shirt and jeans and boots. And all of a sudden, I said, oh my God, I'm describing him. This is what other mediums do, and I've been the one who hasn't seen them till now. So I feel actually quite blessed to be getting the good evidence and now be able to describe them. The goal is all well-rounded, right? For all of us to get all of it as it comes, to flow with it and be grateful for whatever you're getting now, and know, which is why I'm sharing these stories, it really does just keep getting better as we do the work. And what's the work? Tuning in daily, tuning into our guides moment by moment, clearing out any dense energy and anything in our belief system that says I am separate from those I'm connecting with and from source. Clear it out. That's what tonight is going to help you to know. Okay, let's see. Let's see. That man who showed me his hand, that was a very healing reading, which is the whole point of mediumship, not just to show that they're still here. That in itself is healing. But what messages do those across the veil have to share? So after the man showed me a hand without a finger, he showed me this motion of tripping and falling, and he palpitated my heart. And I said, I believe he collapsed from a massive heart attack. He said, that's exactly what happened to him right in front of me. And then he said, tell her she didn't do anything wrong. You know, that may seem silly, a silly thing to say. How could anybody whose partner passed from a heart attack think they did anything wrong? Well, he knew exactly what she needed to hear, because she burst out crying when she heard that. And turns out that she'd been carrying that as a burden all this time, feeling that for some reason she missed something, or if it was her fault. Let's see. This was a wonderful one. Did a reading for a mom who was really struggling. She'd been struggling for years since her son passed. And he came through so beautifully. And he said, just to show how clever they are, he said, tell my mom anyone can get into heaven. And I said, he's showing me the entrance to heaven. This is really bizarre, is like a theme park. And he's showing one of those little gates that you have to push your way through at the entrance to a theme park. She looked at me, she said, did you say theme park? And I said, he said it. He showed it to me very clearly. It turns out that was a major special moment in their life when they were at a special theme park, and she had asked him to talk about it in the reading. So yay. Let's see. He made it clear to me that he was not in the military, yet he showed me himself in a uniform. I couldn't see what the uniform was. His mom said, that makes sense. And sometimes, everybody, we just have to be happy with that makes sense, because it's not a perfect connection like telephone, right? So some things are a little foggy, very brief, but she knew what he was getting at. And so what confused me later was when I said, now he showed me that he was not in the military, and yet he's pointing at you and saying you have a dog tag of his. And she said, she just went, and nodded. And then later on, I said, he's showing me a piece of loose leaf paper with his own handwriting on it and says, it's very important to you. She reaches in under her shirt, pulls out the dog tag and says, on the dog tag is the message from that loose leaf paper in his handwriting. It was a message about his mom, in his handwriting on the dog tag. Can you, I mean, I guess if you're a skeptic or you just are so enamored with your belief system that you don't want to change it, you would say, well, this is, this is not real. But how can we deny that, right? And why would we want to when our loved ones are going to such effort to let us know they're here? Had a lot of connections with sons, many in a row across the veil this last month. And this one son showed me his mother visiting his grave every day. He showed it to me. And she said, yes, I do. Does it bother him? Is he okay with that? And she said, I know he's not there, but does it bother him? And we had a little chat about that from him. Not my opinion, is what he had to say about it. And I'm going to save it because it's not going to share it because it was very personal to her. But what was really cool is that he showed me that there's another woman that she met in the cemetery. She sees her often, and they often talk about their loved ones who are across the veil each time they visit. So even though our loved ones may not be in the grave, when you visit them, they're standing there looking at the grave with you or sitting beside you, chatting as you're chatting to them. So you don't have to go to the gravesite. Anytime you chat with your loved ones, it's like picking up a phone, but wireless, right? All right.